Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I am seeking the Assembly's approval to the making of this set of draft regulations, which contain important provisions relating to the continued support of the United Kingdom's COVID-19 and flu vaccination programmes here in Northern Ireland. I am sure members will agree that the vaccination programmes in recent years have been an outstanding success and that they have helped us once again live a more normal way of life. The Human Medicines Regulations 2012 are a set of UK-wide laws that regulate the use of medicinal products for human use. They set out a comprehensive regime for the authorisation of products, for the manufacture, import, distribution, sale and supply of those products, for their labelling and advertising, and for pharmacovigilance. The Human Medicines Regulations have a UK-wide territorial application and must be amended using powers set out in the Medicines and Medical Devices Act 2021. Subsequently, any statutory instruments amending the Human Medicines Regulation on a UK-wide basis must also be made jointly and debated and approved via the draft affirmative procedure in both the Houses of Parliament and here in the Northern Ireland Assembly. So, as part of the UK's response to the pandemic, the Human Medicines Regulations were amended jointly in 2020 by the Human Medicines Coronavirus Influenza Amendment Regulation 2020 to provide regulatory flexibility to support the rollout of the vaccination campaign and upscale the influenza vaccination programme in the UK while protecting public safety. Therefore, the Human Medicines Coronavirus and Influenza Amendment Regulation 2020 were then introduced to extend some of the flexibilities around the supply, distribution and administration of COVID-19 and influenza vaccines up until the 1st of April 2024. These changes have helped to facilitate the vaccination campaigns that have been taking place against both seasonal flu and COVID-19. So the Health Service in Northern Ireland has made use of the full range of all the options available to them, as enabled by those amendments to the Human Medicines Regulation to safely vaccinate our health staff and the wider population, and that was with the aim of protecting those most at risk and minimising disruption to normal health services. So, given the experiences arising from the pandemic, we needed to retain some flexibility to deal with the unknowns. We now know that vaccines have more than proved their worth, and it is therefore important that we continue to retain the flexibility and ability to deliver these vaccination programmes that some of these provisions have afforded to us. I will now set out and explain the proposed amendments contained in the draft regulations that are before the Assembly today, and I will also explain why these provisions are still needed. Regulation 3 enables trained healthcare professionals or staff under the supervision of healthcare professionals to conduct the final stage of assembly, preparation and labelling of COVID-19 vaccines without additional marketing authorisations or manufacturers' licences being required. That flexibility provided by this provision continues to play an important role in our COVID-19 vaccination programme due to the supply chain arrangements and the way in which vaccinations are packaged. COVID-19 vaccinations are still not available as a pre-filled syringe, and so each vaccine administered continues to require final stage preparation before administration to patients. This provision also allows the labelling of vaccines with a new shelf life at distributor level after thawing, without the need for a manufacturer's licence or marketing authorisation. The current provisions expire on the 1st of April 2024, and if they are not extended, this has the potential to significantly disrupt preparations for the upcoming spring booster programme, which will rely on the ability of vaccine distributors to thaw and relabel COVID-19 vaccines prior to final distribution to health and social care vaccine providers. Regulation 19 allows COVID-19 and influenza vaccines to be moved between vaccine providers operating under health and social care arrangements without the need for a wholesaler's dealer's licence. The supply of vaccines from one healthcare organisation to another would normally be classed as a wholesale distribution supply, and then therefore subject to having a wholesale dealer's licence under Regulation 18 of the HMRs. If such a licence is not held by the organisation because it is not required for normal business, this can lead to problems and delays with moving the vaccines between service providers, and actually runs the risks that appropriate vaccination of at-risk groups cannot take place, and the vaccines that could have been used to facilitate access are actually wasted. The flexibility provided by the amendment to Regulation 19 has enabled both COVID-19 and seasonal influenza vaccines to be moved swiftly and safely within our healthcare system between HSE providers to meet patient need, improve access and avoid wastage. So while the deployment programme is now more mature and under normal circumstances, the requirement for wholesaler dealer licences is an important safeguard. There is a continuing need for these flexibilities to be retained for future campaigns to ensure accessibility and to reduce wastage. Regulation 247A enables the use of an extended workforce who are legally and safely able to administer a COVID-19 or influenza vaccine without the input of a prescriber, and that's using an approved protocol. The national protocol model has become a key tool to support both vaccination programmes by enabling the use of an expanded workforce to administer vaccines with safeguards in place to ensure public safety, such as requirements for the supervision of a prescriber or specified registered healthcare professional, and that reduces pressure on our health and social care workforce in other areas. Mr Deputy Speaker, nearly 500,000 influenza vaccines are administered as part of our annual flu programme, and in addition to this, almost 350,000 COVID-19 vaccines are also now administered as part of the autumn programme. This adds additional strain on an already stretched system. So given that almost 80% of flu and COVID-19 vaccines are co-administered, it is essential that we can make the best use of the available workforce to ensure those considered most at risk can receive their vaccines on time. Although COVID-19 related deaths and hospitalisations have declined, largely due to the continued effectiveness of vaccines and improved treatments, it continues to be recognised globally as a pandemic, which in turn enables the continued use of Regulation 247A to develop those national protocols for the administration of our vaccine. There is a continuing requirement to deliver vaccines at pace and at scale, both now and in the future, while maintaining public safety. Vaccines have proven to be the best line of defence against COVID-19 and for the prevention of severe illnesses arising from seasonal influenza, and that helps to reduce unplanned hospital admissions, which is a key factor in health and social care resilience. I do, however, acknowledge that some of these measures may not be the most appropriate means of supporting vaccine deployment outside a pandemic response, and that a more permanent solution needs to be put in place. So during the period that these amended regulations will operate, my officials will work collaboratively with their counterparts in England, Scotland and Wales to undertake consideration of longer-term and permanent proposals that will be consulted on at a later date. So in the short term, Mr Deputy Speaker, however, at a time when COVID-19 continues to be prevalent, there is an ongoing need to support the continued safe and effective supply, distribution and administration of vaccines by maintaining these provisions to April 2026. There was a UK-wide public consultation in 2023 on the proposed amendments to these three regulations, and my department circulated this consultation to all relevant stakeholders in Northern Ireland. There were 220 responses in total across the UK, and in those responses to this consultation, due to its technical nature, and with less than 3% of those responses actually came from Northern Ireland. However, over 80% of those responded expressed their support for each of the proposed amendments. The human medicines regulations have a UK-wide territorial application and are normally made jointly by my department and the Secretary of State of Health and Social Care, using a draft affirmative procedure, and debated and approved via the draft affirmative procedure in both Houses of Parliament and again in the Assembly. However, with Northern Ireland having recently had no sitting Assembly, and given the significance and time-limited nature of these amendments, the UK Government recently made the decision to proceed with the laying of draft amending statutory instruments that applied only to Great Britain. The statutory instrument was made for Great Britain on the 6th of March, following debate in both the Houses of Commons and House of Lords, and will come into operation on the 31st of March 2024, and extends the legislative provision that I have outlined today up until the 1st of April 2026. The draft regulations before the Assembly replicate the provisions made for Great Britain, and if these draft regulations are approved by the Assembly today, the respective provisions will be extended and will continue to apply to Northern Ireland after the 31st of March 2024 and until the 1st of April 2026. In the same way, they will apply to the rest of the United Kingdom. My officials attended the Health Committee at its meeting on the 29th of February to outline the policy intent of this draft statutory rule and to respond to any questions the committee might have with regard to them possibly being debated in the Assembly. Mr Deputy Speaker, I am pleased to confirm that the committee raised no issue on the content of these draft regulations, and it is with the committee's support, Mr Deputy Speaker, that I now bring the statutory rule before the wider Assembly and its members today. I therefore commend this motion to the Assembly.
Thank you, Minister. I now call on the Chairperson of the Committee for Health, Liz Kimmins.
Mr Deputy Speaker, I welcome this opportunity to outline the Committee for Health's consideration of this rule. The committee was briefed by officials on the rule at its meeting on the 29th of February. The Human Medicines Regulations govern the arrangements for the licensing, manufacture, wholesale dealing and sale or supply of medicines for human use. This rule seeks to amend Regulations 3A, 19 and 247A of the HMRs in order to support the ongoing delivery of COVID-19 and flu vaccinations in the north of Ireland. Officials advise members that Regulation 3A enables trained healthcare professionals or staff under the supervision of healthcare professionals to conduct the final stage of assembly, preparation and labelling of COVID-19 vaccines. Officials outlined that this rule is required as Regulations 3A and 19 have sunset provisions that will cease to have effect in the North on the 1st of April 2024 unless they are extended. During questions, it was discussed about the practical outworkings of why this extension was needed. Officials based that the vaccines are procured on a UK-wide basis and that at present deployment of vaccinations is determined by the characteristics of the vaccines. We are aware that this vaccine is provided as multi-dose preparations and is not currently available as pre-filled syringes. Officials outlined that they hope that improvements in technology would allow that to change over the coming years. This rule will allow the continued rollout of vaccine programmes until a longer-term solution is found. At its meeting on the 29th of February, the committee agreed it was content with the policy proposals of the SL1. The committee then formally considered the statutory rule at its meeting on the 7th of February and agreed that it would recommend that the rule be 7th of March and agreed that it would recommend that the rule be approved by the Assembly.
Thank you. I call Diane Dodds.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and thank you to the Minister for his clarifications, I think, really around some of the issues that I was going to talk about. I do think that we should acknowledge that the debate today does have fewer implications for personal freedoms than the more draconian powers that the Assembly rejected last week. And I think that's very important to put on the record. And I do note that we were included in the consultation and that no local objections were raised. And that again is also very important. I just want to highlight a couple of issues. One is around the issue for the doing away with the requirement to hold a licence for wholesale dealers in relation to this. And the Minister said that under normal circumstances a licence would be required. I think, if I recall rightly, we first started to administer the vaccine very late 2020, and the before us today would extend that to 2026. We've got to really question how long normal circumstances apply in this issue, and I would urge the Department to get on ahead with dealing with this issue. And I would like the Minister, in his summing up, to indicate how they are mitigating the risks of abuse in relation to this, and tell us how many businesses or operators are currently moving the final COVID vaccines to providers. And I think that would be really, really important. We also recognise that The final assembly of the vaccine, or the vaccine is still not in a stage yet where we have the pre-filled vials, and therefore there has to be a final assembly of the vaccine. And we would like to see this move on, and I know it is dependent on manufacturers, but we would like to see this move on so that we can normalise these kind of operations. And I think that that is very important. Minister, I think that in closing there's a really important issue here in that you have asked for an extension to 2026. We understand that this is a UK-wide extension and that these laws will apply UK-wide and that we should do this. But we do want to see a normalisation of this process. And the issues that I have highlighted are extremely, extremely important in doing this and getting us to that position. Thank you.
Thank you. I call Danny Donnelly.
Speaker, I first want to pay tribute to all of those who have worked over the last 4 years to ensure the efficient and effective rollout of the COVID-19 vaccination programme. It was a remarkable achievement from our health and social care staff in particular, but also from the scientists who have made such a life-saving vaccine possible. I also want to thank Minister Swan for his leadership throughout the pandemic. On behalf of the Alliance Party, we will be supporting the draft regulation before the Assembly and the decision to extend Regulations 3A 19 to 47A of the Human Medicines Regulations Act to maintain the existing clauses until 2026 and to prevent their expiration later this year. Extending these clauses will permit the continued operation of COVID-19 and influenza vaccine programmes under an expanded workforce on a scale required to keep our population safe. And that's what's important here. We should be doing all we can to support the rollout of these vaccination programmes. As with other COVID-related extensions, it is important that the Department of Health works towards a more permanent long-term solution, and I hope the Minister intends to work with relevant partners in order to take a full consideration of the operation of the vaccine programmes over the next 2 years. One point I want to raise in this debate is the danger of vaccine misinformation, which sadly remains prevalent, particularly on social media. I hope all members will agree with me that such misinformation should be challenged. Vaccines save lives, and the COVID vaccine has saved many lives across the UK and here in Northern Ireland. It has allowed us to move away from lockdowns and other public health measures. It is important that we support the continued rollout of the ongoing vaccination programmes, so thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, and I call Alan Chambers.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The amendment being considered today may seem fairly technical in nature, but in reality it is critical to the ongoing delivery of the vaccination programme here. That's largely due to the circumstances and physical characteristics of the vaccines we are currently still using across Northern Ireland and the rest of the United Kingdom. Unlike other vaccines, COVID vaccines are not currently available as pre-filled syringes. They are only available in multi-dose vials, and they are still mainly distributed in frozen state throughout this supply chain. Because of all of this, they require further physical efforts and intervention at the point of administration to the patient. And that's what makes them so different to many other vaccines, and why the flexibilities being discussed today need to be extended. And whilst there is progress being made all the time, at the moment the vaccines we use for the COVID-19 programme, which are procured on a UK-wide basis for the 4 nations, are still only available in a physical manner that requires these extensions. Of course, today's debate is only happening because there was no functioning assembly in place until last month. The United Kingdom Government at Westminster has already laid a similar statutory instrument in January, but that applied only in Great Britain. Today's amendments will see the equivalent flexibilities extended here and for a similar time frame up to April 1st, 2026. By that point, hopefully there will have been enough progress and advancements made with the research and technology behind the vaccines to allow them to be packaged and distributed like many of the other existing injections. But in the meantime, today's amendment and extension are necessary, in particular for the likes of the booster programme that is due to commence here next month. And certainly, Mr Deputy Speaker, on a personal level, I look forward to being able to continue to receive the vaccine boosters, and I confirm that the Ulster Unionist Party fully support this extension. Thank you.
Thank you. I call Colin McGrath.
Speaker, and I welcome the opportunity to speak on this today, because it is important that we note that these regulations will help and assist with the preparation and distribution of COVID vaccines, and that remains a critical weapon in our arsenal to help us fight against COVID and, of course, the seasonal flu. We know the problems that can occur if our hospitals become overwhelmed, especially during winter time. We know that the pressures that this can put on staff and on the systems, and if we can do anything with these vaccinations to try and reduce the numbers of people contracting this, it will certainly help. We know that it doesn't take a genius to draw the connection between having the vaccination, it preventing you from catching the illness, and then that preventing you from having to go into hospital. And we know that that is something that the staff would greatly appreciate. And we also see, as has been referenced already, that we're seeing cases of other illnesses such as measles on the increase. We have known that there is a problem of slipping back in to more examples of that condition, and it's often because people are not taking the opportunity to have the vaccinations because of social media misinformation. So I hope that people that can get those vaccinations will take them as well. I am a bit concerned just that if we see any further increases of the likes of COVID again, that our health service is so close to collapse that it would really struggle. And that there would be a difficulty because a lot of the goodwill that we required of staff in the past may not be there because they're exhausted, they feel that they're overworked, they feel that they're underpaid, and they feel that the transformation that is necessary within the health service is taking too long to be delivered. So I hope that that is something that the Minister will be able to continue to work on to try and give us a system, a health system that is able to cope should there be a rise of these things in the future. But certainly in terms of this motion that's here today, the SDLP is happy to support.
Thank you. And I call Paul Frew.
Mr Speaker, first of all, can I pay tribute to the work of my colleagues Diane Dawes and Alan Robertson, who have been doing sterling work on the Health Committee, scrutinising a lot of these measures and really putting the spotlight on and the scrutiny on the department, and I welcome that. And of course, Mr Speaker, I would fight for anyone's right to obtain a medicine that they thought would assist them in their health. And so it is important that medicines are available for people to obtain when they require them. So that's a given, Mr Speaker. The issue I would have, and what I've lived through over the last 4 years, is the way that the Department of Health created a them and us society, whereby you were shamed if you did not take this medicine. And I think that's a period of shame that we all look upon and ask ourselves, why did this Assembly find itself in that position? Where, first of all, you had to coerce people to take a medicine that was highly promoted, but then you discriminated against people who didn't receive the medicine. And that should have been a free will choice. It was good that medicine was available. It was not good that people were coerced to take it. And because people have been coerced to take this very medicine, the COVID-19 vaccines, I do believe that's why this Minister, the Department of Health, and the previous executive who coerced these people, I do believe that's why they then ignore people who have been vaccine damaged. And that's a very serious thing, because we know that with every medicine, every single medicine, it could be the best medicine in the world, there are still adverse reactions to that medicine. So why then do we ignore these people who have been vaccine injured? Why can we not be open, and why can we not support these people? Because whilst there is this veil over the eyes of the department towards these people will not receive the acknowledgement and the help that they require to move on in their lives. I'll make progress and then I will give way. We know, according to the yellow card scheme, that there's been over 51 fatalities reported. We know, this is Northern Ireland, we know that in the yellow card reporting scheme there's been over 5,000 reports of serious adverse incidents. I've met well over 100 people who have been injured. And the journey that those people have been on has been absolutely horrendous. Yet you won't hear about a debate in this place about how those people are affected. Why is that the case? Why are these people ignored? Why do the Department of Health ignore these people? And not only do they ignore these people, at times they gaslight them. I've heard it many times in this House, or outside of this House, by members, that people who are vaccine injured are anti-vaccine. Now, Mr. Speaker, that's an impossibility. That is an absolute impossibility. These people took the vaccine in good faith, been promoted by the Department of Health, and these people need support. But the very people who could give them support, the MLAs in this chamber and the Department of Health and the Minister, turn their face away. Mr. Speaker, I also want to... I'll give way now, if that's okay, and I'll make progress. I'll give way.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I've heard, and we've seen a lot of these things we've already mentioned today about vaccine misinformation being on social media. One of the things that does concern me is that talk like this might put people off taking the vaccine when it's offered. So I would like to ask the member if he would agree with me that people who are being offered the COVID vaccination on the ongoing rollout should take the vaccination when they're offered, and that he supports the rollout of the COVID vaccination.
Mr. Speaker, I've applauded the vaccine rollout from the very day it began. But I'll tell you this, taking of medicine should be an individual choice, down to an individual's, because it's okay for members and ministers here to say everyone should get a vaccine and actually discriminate against people who don't. But it's up to their own individual health needs, and that's why they should consult their GP. No MLA should enforce a vaccine on anyone. And that's why it's very important, especially when medicine can give side effects. But he talks about confidence, and I do look at the issue around confidence now, and I am absolutely appalled. And I believe one of the reasons why people have no confidence with the Department of Health around this is because they see how people who have been vaccine damaged are being treated, being ignored, being gaslit, being called anti-vax. And I think that has had a massive impact on confidence with regards to medicines. Mr. Speaker, I want to make progress and say one other thing too, and that is the vaccine damage payment scheme is totally and utterly inappropriate. And I would ask the Minister to comment on this, because you only get, if you prove that you're damaged and disabled, over 60% disabled, you only get £120,000. Now, some of these people I have met, their condition is life-limiting. They cannot proceed to live a normal life. And 120,000 just does not cut it, Mr. Speaker. It just doesn't do it. But yet you have to go through a rigmarole of assessment in order to prove that you're 60% disabled. What if you're 59% disabled? What if you're 50% disabled and your life is ruined? Where do you go from there? So I would ask the Minister to comment on the vaccine damage payment scheme, and if he thinks that that scheme should be reformed in order that people who have been vaccine damaged can get the support that they need for the rest of their lives. Thank you.
Our list of speakers. I'm going to ask the Minister, Robin Swan, to conclude and wind up the debate.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. And returning, can I thank you and can I thank the Chair and the other members who have made contributions to the regulations and I suppose what has been a part of a wider debate. I want to now turn to some of the points that have been raised, and I thank the Chair for the ongoing support and the engagement that was had at the committee. In regards to Mrs Dodd's inquiries in regards to COVID-related medicines, why we need to extend to 2026 and why we don't have a more conventional way to doing it and delivering these provisions. These provisions continue to be important for the continued 19 vaccination programme in Northern Ireland due to the supply chain arrangements and the way vaccines are currently packaged. The current recommended COVID-19 vaccinations, as has been said, are still not available as pre-filled syringes, and so each vaccine administered continues to require final stage preparation before administration to patients. They are also distributed in the frozen state through the supply chain and require defrosting prior to final distribution to the health service vaccine providers. I don't have the specific numbers of businesses involved in that, but I will get that to the member in writing. So if we allow these provisions to lapse, as I've said, then this would very significantly disrupt plans for the disruption and deployment of vaccines for the upcoming spring programme. Also, these provisions have also allowed the movement of vaccine between providers operating under our health and social care arrangements without the need for that wholesale dealer's licence, and that's in order to meet patient need, improve access and reduce wastage. The supply of vaccines from one healthcare organisation to another would normally be classed as a wholesale distribution supply and is subject to having a wholesale dealer's licence, as I said, under Regulation 18 of the HMR. If such a licence is not held by the organisation because it's not required for normal business, and is the case for many healthcare organisations, this could lead to problems and delays with moving the vaccines between service providers and actually runs the risk that appropriate vaccination of at-risk groups cannot take place and vaccine that could have been used to facilitate access are wasted. So while the deployment programme is now more mature and under normal circumstances the requirement for wholesaler dealer licences is that important safeguard, there's a continued need for these flexibilities to be retained for future campaigns to ensure accessibility and to reduce wastage while longer term and permanent proposals are developed. And I think, Mr Deputy Speaker, looking to some of the other comments, as part of that UK-wide collaboration across the four nations, is how we look between now and the 1st of April 2026 to put a permanent solution in regards to how we manage vaccine supply and distribution and relabelling and the workforce challenges that we've had actually in place across that UK-wide four nations basis. Mr Deputy Speaker, not included in these SRs but mentioned today is that of vaccine safety. Safety is at the forefront of both the COVID-19 and influenza vaccination programmes. Important safeguards have been put in place to ensure the flexibilities provided by these amendments and wider do so in a safe and effective manner. Vaccines are still subject to the usual controlled storage requirements, which include the maintenance of cold chain and the transfer of any medicine between vaccine providers, and under these arrangements that will be properly controlled and appropriate records are maintained of correct storage and transfers. A key part of safety is also ensuring the vaccinator workforce is trained to the highest level, ensuring the workforce has undergone comprehensive training before administering a vaccine, and staff operating under national protocol arrangements are supervised by a named healthcare professional. So in regard to the safety of COVID-19 vaccines themselves, each COVID-19 vaccine candidate has been assessed by teams of scientists and clinicians on a case-by-case basis, and is only authorised once it has met robust standards of effectiveness, safety and quality set out by the independent medicines regulator, the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency. The MHRA is a globally recognised organisation, recognised for requiring high standards of safety. and importantly, the monitoring of vaccine safety does not stop once a vaccine has been approved. The MHRA continuously monitors the safety of the COVID-19 vaccines through a comprehensive COVID-19 vaccine surveillance strategy to ensure that the benefits outweigh any known risks. All our COVID-19 vaccines administered in Northern Ireland to date have been approved by use by the MHRA. So in addition, the COVID-19 vaccine programme has followed the advice and recommendations of the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation, the independent expert advisory group that advises the 4 UK health departments on all vaccination-related matters. It's the MHRA in the report on coronavirus vaccines updated in March 2023, which states that all vaccines and medicines have some side effects. These side effects need to be continually balanced against the expected benefits in preventing illness. Following widespread use of these vaccines across the UK, the vast majority of suspected adverse reactions reports confirm the safety profile seen in clinical trials. Most reports relate to injection site reactions and generalised symptoms such as flu-like illness, headaches, chills, fatigue. And generally, these reactions are not associated with more serious illness and likely reflected as expected. The benefits of vaccines in preventing COVID-19 and the serious complications associated with COVID-19 far outweigh any currently known side effects, and the safety of COVID-19 vaccines continue to be monitored by the MHRA, and the benefits and possible risks remain under review, as with all vaccines and medicines. So anyone receiving a COVID-19 vaccination in Northern Ireland should also receive a leaflet advising them of the possible side effects, as well as how to report a suspect adverse reaction via the Yellow Card reporting scheme. The Yellow Card scheme is run by the MHRA and is the UK system for collecting and monitoring information on suspected safety concerns or incidents involving medicines and medical devices. It relies on voluntary reporting of suspect adverse drug reactions by health professionals and patients. All COVID-19 and flu vaccinations administered to date in Northern Ireland have been entirely voluntary. COVID-19 and flu vaccines are made available to those considered at greatest risk based on the recommendations of JCVI. The general public continue to make up their own minds regarding the vaccines they receive, and hundreds of thousands continue to take up the offer of vaccinations when invited to do so. In regards to the vaccine payment system, damage payment system, and the level it is set at, Mr. Frew will know it is a UK-wide system that is set at Westminster level, and to date my department has not reviewed stepping outside what is a UK-wide system, as the UK scheme being administered through COVID-19 vaccinations and where the purchase, supplied and regulated is done at a UK-wide basis. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I firmly believe that these provisions are vital and should be extended as proposed, and that the COVID-19 and influenza vaccination programmes in Northern Ireland have made extensive use of these flexibilities, and their cessation would cause significant disruption to our programmes. I therefore commend the motion on these regulations to the Assembly.
Thank the Minister for concluding the debate. Members, the question is that the draft human medicines amendments relating to coronavirus and influenza regulations Northern Ireland 2024 be approved. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it.